Santa Barbara County Planning Commission for May 31, 2023. And please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. Mr. Villalobos, will you make our TV announcement and then follow that with our roll call?
Yes, thank you, Chair Park, and good morning to the Commission. Planning Commission hearings are televised live on County of Santa Barbara Television, CSB TV, Channel 20 at 9 a.m. in the South Coast, Lompoc, Salinas Valley, Santa Maria, and Arca areas. Rebroadcast Planning Commission hearings are on Fridays after 5 p.m. on CSB TV Channel 20. Today's hearing will also be streamed live on the county's website and will be available for download in a day or two. Moving on to the roll call, Commissioner Cooney.
Here.
Commissioner Bridley.
Here.
Chair Park.
I'm here.
And Commissioners Farini and Martinez will be joining us in just a few minutes.
That's right. Okay. Well, Secretary Wilson, will you give us your agenda status report and then go ahead with the projection report after that?
Thank you, Chair and members of the Commission. In regards to the status of our agenda today, we have two items on the standard agenda. The first item is a conditional use permit for a business in the Magnolia Shopping Center, and then the second item on the agenda is presentation by Long Range Planning for the safety element update on wildfire policies. Staff and applicants are ready and available to present on all those items today. Can we move to the projection report, Mr. Chair?
Please do.
Our next hearing was scheduled for July 7th. However, we canceled that, I believe, at our last hearing. June 7th. Did I say? I was off to a good start. Already lost it. So, starting again, our next hearing would have been on June 7th. We canceled it. Our next hearing after that is June 14th, and that will be here in Santa Barbara. We have a government code consistency, two government code consistencies, and then we have the appeal of the transfer of ownership at the Las Flores pipeline system, and that will be on June 14th. Moving down the projection report, our next hearing after that is on June 28th. That'll be in Santa Maria, and that is an appeal of a cannabis cultivation project. As of right now, we have no items projected for July 5th, and then on July 12th, we'll be again in Santa Maria. There's one item projected, which is an appeal of a entrance gate. That could take a little while, I believe. That's a tough crowd today. Moving down the projection report, there is no items. Well, that's then moving to July 26th. We have two items projected. We'll be back here in Santa Barbara. We have an appeal of another cannabis nursery, two appeals on that day, both of those in the one off of Foothill, both of them off of Foothill in the Carpentry area. And then August 2nd, we have two items, a conditional use permit and amendment of a project is probably in the same shopping center as the item today. And then the other item on that is another development plan for a project. So that's on August 2nd. August 9th, nothing projected. And then August 30th, we have one item projected, and that's in Santa Barbara as well. And there's an appeal of a odor abatement plan in Carpinteria. So the summer has some items on it. So that concludes the projection report, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Do any of my fellow commissioners have questions of Mr. Wilson? I do. Just a couple. First, on June 14, where it says appeals of transfer permit for the Las Flores pipeline system, I was contacted by an applicant's representative who said it's not an appeal. It's I don't know, it's something that's not a, yeah, and so that, and the reason I want clarification on that is I have to be able to
discuss with the representatives of the different sides how much time they get and who goes first and those things. So if anyone can weigh in that knows more than me, which is like everybody in the room, please do.
Mr. Chair, thank you for bringing that up. We need to update the projection report. Since that item was listed on the projection report, the applicant withdrew one of the requests for ownership, the temporary ownership request, and then they've submitted a new application for permanent ownership. So that application was withdrawn, and they've submitted a new application. So it is no longer an appeal. So because of the nature of both of the items, it requires a planning commission review. So it just automatically goes to planning commission. So it'll be heard by the planning commission for the first time. So there's no longer an appeal.
And we had 3 appellants when it was an appeal, right?
There was 3 appellants.
Okay. Just, you know what I'm going to tell the commission, just so you know, I don't think we're addressing this matter, it's just procedurally. I told the applicant's representative that they should be prepared to take 15 minutes. This isn't the very most complicated thing. And that we would, of course, give each of the people or entities that would have normally been appellants, they'd get 3 minutes anyway. And I said, oh, I'll give them each 5 minutes. So we'll go 15 and 15. I hope that works well for everybody. Okay. Second question.
So, yeah, Mr. Chair, so, yeah, just to clarify that again. So the applicants, they have their time, but there is no appellants anymore, so.
I know, and so what I'm going to do is, so that we don't have this droning on, and they will be speaking in public comment, I'm going to give them each 2 extra minutes, because they thought they were appellants, and there we are. Looking at the potential dates for workshops on the rec master plan, it looks like we got an empty date in July. Where did I go here? And that's July 5, and that July 12 looks pretty light. So if we can be ready by then, those might be 1 or 2 of those dates. And then we've got a light date on August 2, I think. So these are just ideas. And then in August 9, of course, is empty. So I'm just curious, do any of the commissioners that are here have vacation plans in July or August? Guess not, okay. And Commissioner Cooney, you won't be here on the 14th of June, right?
That's correct.
Okay,
I'll be
great.
back on the 28th.
Okay. All right, well, let's move on.
You know, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
Mr. Chair and,
Oh.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Commissioner
Me
Bradley.
first, okay. If there's a way, I mean, if we are ready for those workshops, I'm anxious for them too. It would be great to bundle it with the July 12th, so we leave July 5th free.
Oh, so that, right, that's be more efficient. That's a thought.
And I'm assuming it's just like a regular item, but we're trying to get the word out so people can come and hear about it and talk.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
What was the other items on July 12? Oh, the Roundup Road entrance gate, okay. All right, good idea. Well, now's the time for public comment. What's that? Okay. Public comment on items that are not on our agenda today. And typically, we hold that to 15 minutes total and 3 minutes per person. Do we have anyone who's signed up for public comment, either on the Zoom media or in person, or something else I'm not aware of?
Chair Park, we do not have any requests.
Okay. Do we have any planning commissioners' informational reports? Hearing none?
Mr. Chair,
Oh,
I do have a short report.
thank you.
I knew I had something to report, but I couldn't remember what it was, but I now do. It is a hearing that was held at the Montecito Union School a week or so ago regarding the flood control
Oh, yes.
planning, and it's a hot topic in Montecito. There were representatives of Public Works, of course, but also planning, and I'd say there were about 75 people there. Very interesting.
You know, I'm glad you reported on that. One thing I was interested in is I remember our sound wall case we had in front of us, and that so much of that rested on what the latest data would be on potential flooding, and I wonder if that got addressed at all in this. What potential flooding that there would be in through those creeks that would be affected by a sound wall.
What the hearing was, according to staff, it was the first of 3 planned public hearings on
okay.
flood control in just Montecito. And I got the impression that it was going to be a long, carefully drawn-out process.
Yeah, well, that's very important. Okay, thanks for reporting on that. Now let's turn to the minutes, and we have minutes of May 3 and May 10. Do any of the commissioners have comments on the minutes of May 3?
Mr. Chair, this is, I'm sure Mr. Wilson notes this as well, the fact that our minutes are being so carefully prepared and proofread obviously takes away a lot of the fun of reviewing them, but with respect to the minutes of both May 3 and May 10, I have nothing to comment on and would move approval.
Actually,
Well, how about you, Commissioner Bradley?
how about that?
Are you going to
because
one-up him, and did you find a grammatical error or
I
something?
did.
Oh, you
well,
did?
I
Good
actually,
for you.
Yes, this, on the ones for May 10th, on page 3, going down to the findings, so the consistency between this and the May 3rd ones, staff has typically said, attachment B to the staff report dated May 2. So when I read to this memo on item 3, it seemed awkward. It seemed like that was missing. So I know we're super consistent. And then right below that, on the revision to the findings, I don't think you need the word determination in that introductory sentence. Does not concur with the following finding. This is really getting in the weeds because it's such a light agenda. I apologize. I went into proofreading mode. Are you seeing that, Mr. Villalobos? Yeah. Okay, that's all. May 3rd, great.
Okay, that change being made, and the moving party would accept that change?
I do, Mr. Chair.
And I take it you would second it, Commissioner Bradley?
Yes, I'd be happy to second it.
And with that extensive discussion, do we now have to have public comment, County Council? I suppose not. Okay. Then, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion's carried. And now on to our director's report. Our director who so kindly let me in the door today. So,
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. I have just a short report this morning. We have budget workshops coming up. They are scheduled for June 16th and June 20th. It's likely that the board will finish them on June 16th, so if you're interested in monitoring, I would watch the Friday, the 16th, to see where things go. We don't have any recommended changes to our budget or additions or anything like that, so ours should be pretty perfunctory, but you never know. Sometimes you get questions. And just a reminder again that the board is going on summer break the last week of July and the first 3 weeks of August, so they'll be dark that month. And their first hearing in August is the 22nd of August. I don't have much new to report on the housing element, other than we're working on the programmatic EIR. We're still waiting to hear from the state. The state comments are due July 2nd. So I will keep you posted on that if we get anything prior to that. And then the extension that the Planning Commission approved of our, what we called COVID and Economic Recovery Temporary Ordinance Amendments were approved by the board on May 16th.
Oh, that's good news.
Yeah. And so those will be in place until October 2024. And then just future board items, we have 4 items coming up, 2 in July. Coral Casino Appeal is going to be at the board on the 11th of July. And then the item you're hearing today, which is the wildfire policies that are part of the safety element, will be heard by the board on the 11th of July. And then on 8/22, we have the Exxon pipeline valve replacement appeal and what we now call CRIMF, which was formerly known as CREF.
Right.
That's right.
It's like Prince, formerly known as. So yes, the copyright issue, but that is going on the 22nd of August.
And what does CRIM stand for?
Coastal Restoration Mitigation Fund
Okay.
instead of enhancement.
Okay. All right.
And that's it. That's all I have today, so I'm happy to answer any questions.
So I'm going to ask one that might be timely for this, or maybe it's better after our first item. I can recall, specifically, I believe, 3 CUP cases involving Magnolia Shopping Center, and we're going to have a 4th today, and it looks like a 5th one, if I read the projection report right. And I'm thinking, like, how many FTEs do we need from the board at the budget hearing so that we can change the SC zone to not require CUPs for recreation facilities? Because and I know that sounds facetious, but the cost of holding these hearings, and which I think is borne by the applicants, and probably nothing they look forward to, it must be worth it at some point to change the code.
I have very exciting news for you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, my goodness.
We've only asked 15 years in a row.
Because this is part of the expansion project that the board funded last year. And we already have a consultant hired, so it's going to be wrapped into a bigger package of ordinance amendments, which is overhauling our multifamily residential zone district and our commercial zone districts to facilitate housing. But this, we're probably just going to eliminate, and I'm not going to guarantee this, eliminate the shopping center zone, because it's really outdated and there doesn't seem to be any purpose to it. So that we will make these things much simpler. But we're working on it.
Well, that's really good news, because I think we look at some of the zones, highway commercial's another one that we've talked about recently, that look like they were drafted decades ago, and they were, and their times have changed.
Yep.
So that's good news.
Mr. Chair, just on that, I
Yes.
don't want to get too far off topic, but the other thing that I am desperate to see hopefully change is the standards for stacking for drive-through facilities in the parking ordinance, actually looking at the parking ordinance in general, because it's woefully kind of out of date. And in memory of
Commissioner
Mr.
Brightman.
Blau, the sign ordinance, does that have any status in that work?
So I'm going to have to double check to see where those are lined up. I don't remember exactly where they are in the package. We have a lot we're trying to achieve with this one package. It's the creation of more ministerial permits. There's some lighting standards attached to it, and so I'll have to double check. But I know those are other things. Those are maybe things that can be addressed, maybe in this, but maybe in another
The
package.
following, year. I brought it up when you were doing an ordinance amendment package or a work program or something like this. I'm like,
Yeah.
does anybody want to join with me in looking at this stacking of, for drive-through facilities? And I didn't get any votes. So if it's not on your list, it's not a surprise, but I'll just remind you.
Okay,
Thank you.
sure.
Okay, well, thank you for your report. Let's move on to the standard agenda. Read the first item into the record. Thank you, Mr. Villalobos.
Sure thing. The following is a hearing on the request of Hunter Chancellor Fitness and Holdings LLC to consider case number 23 CUP 20 and to determine the project is exempt from CEQA pursuant to CEQA section, guideline section 15303.
Okay. Do we have any ex parte contacts to report?
I do, Mr. Chair. I spoke with Jay Ritterbeck on Monday about some details of the project in the shopping center, and that was it.
Okay. Mr. Cooney, do you have any?
No, I don't.
You don't, okay, and I don't either. Okay, well, let's go ahead with the staff presentation on this item.
All right, good morning, Commissioners. My name
Can
is,
can I jump in for a second?
yes.
So, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, I just want to take the moment to introduce Ms. Volpe
Oh,
and embarrass her. Today is her first time presenting to the Planning Commission. She's been with us probably about a year now.
yeah.
So she's, it's taken that long to get in front of the Planning Commission. So we're happy to have her here and, wanted to introduce her to the commission today.
Thank you. All right, good morning, Commissioners. My name is Kathleen Volpe, and I will be presenting the proposal for the Cycle Bar Indoor Cycling Fitness Facility. These are aerial views of the proposed project site. The photo on the left shows the Magnolia Shopping Center in reference to major roadways, and the aerial photo on the right shows the commercial site location within the Magnolia Shopping Center where the facility will be located. Access is provided off of Hollister Avenue. The project is a request for a conditional use permit for a change in use from an antique store to an indoor fitness facility, Cycle Bar, in an existing 2,673 square foot commercial space at the Magnolia Shopping Center. Cycle Bar will serve customers daily from the hours of 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. There will be a maximum of 10 employees that would rotate to teach classes, with 1 or 2 teachers hosting an average class size of 20 to 25 patrons at the facility. The maximum class size would be limited to 50 patrons based upon the pieces of indoor cycling equipment within the facility. Parking is accommodated in the existing 576 space parking lot. No exterior changes or signage is proposed, as well as no exterior use is proposed. This is the proposed floor plan for Cycle Bar. As you can see, there is a retail area, locker area, and cycle theater, along with some men and women's restroom. The project requires a conditional use permit based on Table 213 of the LUDC, allowable land uses and permit requirements for commercial zones, which states a conditional use permit is a permit requirement for a fitness/health club or facility in the SC zone district. The project is consistent with the comprehensive plan, including the Eastern Galita Valley Community Plan. It is consistent with the purpose and intent of the zone. It provides adequate parking. Services currently exist to serve the facility, and this project will expand the range of uses within the shopping center. The project is categorically exempt from environmental review pursuant of Section 15303 of CEQA. Section 15303 exempts the conversion of existing small structures from one use to another where only minor modifications are made in the exterior of the structure. This section is applicable to the proposed project because the project involves conversion of an existing vacant lease space to an indoor cycling facility, and no exterior changes are proposed. Staff recommends that your commission make the required findings for an approval of the project, determine the project is exempt from CEQA, and grant approval of the project subject to conditions of approval. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Do any of my fellow commissioners have questions of Ms. Volpe? Yeah, okay, let's start with Mr. Martinez.
Yeah, good morning. My only question, and I just wanted to make sure this was clear in my mind, is that the existing number of parking spaces is 576, and that's going to remain the same?
Correct, yes.
Okay, that's my only question. Thank you.
Okay. Then Commissioner Bradley?
First of all, I love the PowerPoint and dropping in that SC chart. That helps us understand what it really means to work with that code. So I thought this was fine. I'm very familiar with the shopping center, and I actually know the owner of the former antique mall things, and he's downtown now. So I think this is going to be a great business. I guess my question is, you said that there were going to be 50 patrons at any one time, but I'm not seeing that in the project description or anywhere, and I don't frankly want to include it because it's a shopping center. And so if you had a wildly successful restaurant move into one of these spaces, they have the right to be like that. I just wanted to know, that's the first time I'd heard the number of patrons at one time.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, so the limitation of the 50 patrons is not included in the project description, but I understand the site plan that we had up, I can actually bring it up. I believe the limitation is the number of cycles that they have
okay.
included, so I think that's just kind of their intention, but they're not limited in their project description. So if they did decide to increase the number of bicycles, I don't think we would.
It's a shopping center.
Right.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you very much. And let's see, was there anything else? No, I think that was it. Thank you.
All right. Do we have an applicant's presentation?
Good morning, Chair Park. I do have a presentation. I don't want to belabor. It's just quick slides, but either they can load it or I'm not sure if I can share my screen here. There we go. So as everybody has alluded to, this is a conditional use permit. We appreciate you guys recognizing that this is a pretty high bar for such a use to go into the shopping center. So that attention and that intention to change that potentially in the future is appreciated. We can go to the next slide.
And your name?
My name is Jay Ritterbeck.
That's what I
I
thought.
am representing the Cycle Bar project. As Ms. Volpe had alluded to and showed on the map, the Cycle Bar facility will be located in building number 1 of the 3 buildings in the Magnolia Shopping Center. It'll be situated right between Union Bank and one of the other fitness facilities in the shopping center, which is F45. Next slide. So Cycle Bar, there's about a dozen of these type of facilities within the Southern California region. This Cycle Bar facility will be the northernmost. I do not believe there's one located north of us until we get to the Bay Area. So it's a very popular, it's actually a nationwide chain. There are several of those here in Tennessee as well. So it's a very good facility and very reputable. We can go to the next slide. So this is the indoor, this is the layout as well. And again, I don't want to belabor it. Ms. Volpe had included this on her presentation. Very, very standard facility. We do have the applicant, Ms. Hunter Chancellor, is there in the audience as well. She can speak to any specific details about the business, itself. But we appreciate the the Magnolia Shopping Center, the different types of businesses in there, and the redevelopment and revitalization in that entire shopping center is pretty exciting to see. That concludes my presentation, and any questions I can answer as well. Thank you.
Do we have any questions of Mr. Ritterback? Okay. Do we have any public comment today on this item?
I have no request to speak.
Okay. And since there was no public comment, Mr. Ritterback, I take it you have no urge to make a rebuttal comment. Is that right?
No, we have spoken with staff. We worked with them very well. We really appreciate Mr. Dargle and Ms. Volpe and their attention to detail and their questions. As alluded to, the 50, that was something we introduced, and that's a limitation that we have just because of the equipment. So all the conditions of approval, totally in agreement with, and just appreciate the staff's time as well as the commission. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. And staff, do you have any clarifications to make or further comment? Okay. And do any of my fellow commissioners have questions of staff at this point? Then let's close the public hearing and go into deliberations. Would you like to start, Commissioner Bridley? I think it's in your district.
I think it's a great thing. I think it's reinvigorating these shopping centers, which are really, should be redefined as community centers or something, but that's a whole different topic. And so I'm totally willing to make the motion when the time comes.
Okay. Any other comments and deliberations? Commissioner Cooney?
Yes, Mr. Chair, just one comment. My only concern about this project when I looked at it was the potential for noise from participants in the exercise. In other places, I have heard quite a bit coming out as the nature of the exercise is exuberance. But they are subject to normal 65 decibel limitations, and I doubt it'll be a problem.
Okay. Any other comments? I'll just share one. I represented shopping centers for a long time, so I always think about them and what they're doing. And I think that Commissioner Riley makes an excellent point that they're evolving right now. They need to. They're there, and we need to use the land for something. And here we have, I think, at Magnolia, some retail's been going out, but facilities like this have been coming in, and this seems like a excellent kind of use at the shopping center with all of its parking. And then it's nice for the users to be able to park and feel safe at the hours. I think this closes at 8, whenever it'll be, at night that they would be using it. And it's good for the shopping center to have people coming in that late. It helps the other tenants. So I support it as well. Okay, Commissioner Bradley, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I would like to make the recommended action as a motion to make the required findings for approval of the project, including the CEQA findings, to determine the project is exempt from CEQA pursuant to Section 15303, and to approve the project, case number 23 CUP 00020, subject to the conditions of approval. And thank you to staff for dropping the middle 5 zeros on all your cases recently. Yay.
Second.
You really are an eagle eye.
That's a lot of zeros to say.
I think you're going to be able to take over for Commissioner Cooney on our proofreading. I don't know. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there any further comments and deliberations on the motion itself? Not hearing any. All in favor, please say aye.
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 And the motion's carried, isn't it? Okay, well, thank you everyone who came today. And let's go on to our second item. Could you read it into the record, Mr. Villalobos?
The following is a hearing on the request of the County of Santa Barbara County Planning and Development Department that the County Planning Commission recommend the Board of Supervisors adopt a comprehensive plan amendment, case number 22 GPA 5, amending the wildfire hazard information and policies in the seismic safety and safety element of the county comprehensive plan, including incorporating the 2022 multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan by reference into the safety element pursuant to Government Code Section 65302.6.
Well, this is exciting. I rarely see Mr. Lackey, and I'm pleased to see you, and I haven't seen Ms. Hartley in about 2 years, so good morning, good to see you again.
Good morning, Chair Park, members of the commission. We're pleased to be here to present our safety element update, focusing on the wildfire policies. And so I'll turn it over to our project manager, Whitney Wilkinson.
Very good.
All right. Good morning, Chair Park and Commissioners. Again, my name for the record is Whitney Wilkinson. I'm a planner in Long Range Planning, and I'm the project manager for the Safety Element Update project. I'm here today again to present amendments to the safety element primarily on wildfire information and policies. Also, in case you have in-depth questions about the practices and regulations that pertain to the fire districts, we have our county fire marshal here, Rob Hazard, who can help out with those. So throughout my presentation today, I may refer to other concurrent phases of the Safety Element Update project, so I wanted to briefly mention what they are. The presentation you will receive today is the first phase up there, and the other two are still in development and include our second phase, our evacuation modeling and planning project, and the third includes development of our climate change adaptation plan. The purpose of today's update to the safety element is to meet some of the legislative requirements pertaining to the safety element, incorporate the 2022 multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan into the safety element, and to meet the recommendations found in CAL FIRE's safety element assessment, which covers some of those legislative requirements. The legislative updates we are specifically addressing include SB 1241, the last update to the safety element in 2015, aimed to address this legislation. However, the Board of Supervisors elected to leave some requirements of this law for a future update and are now being addressed in this update. This legislation requires addressing fire risks in the state responsibility areas and in the very high fire hazard severity zones. It also required the county to make certain findings when approving subdivision maps, and these were addressed through previous amendments to Chapter 21 of the County Code back in 2015. SB 1035 requires the county to review and update the safety element as necessary at least every 8 years with any new information relating to fire hazards and climate adaptation and resilience strategies. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, our team is also currently working on Phase 3 updates, which will incorporate information from our climate change vulnerability assessment completed in 2021 and our climate adaptation plan, which again is in development. The third update we address is SB 99, which requires the safety element to identify residential developments with only one emergency evacuation route. On April 4th of this year, the Board of Supervisors adopted the 2022 Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan. As part of their findings, the board directed staff to incorporate the updated HMP into the safety element. Doing so allows the county to be eligible for a greater portion of state disaster relief funding. The previous versions of the HMP were also incorporated into the safety element. Our third driver behind this update is a tool that was used to guide the amendment process, the safety element assessment. This is CAL FIRE's tool to help them determine if our safety element is meeting various requirements and how they offer recommendations to add information or strengthen policies that mitigate or reduce fire risk. This slide is a high-level look at the safety elements table of contents and is highlighting where in the safety element you can find our proposed amendments. There are obviously numerous updates to the fire hazard and fire services section, along with a few minor updates to the abstract and citations related to wildfire. We also updated the language in hyperlink in section 8 where the HMP is discussed. And finally, we wanted to add some minor additions to each hazard section where evacuation is discussed. These changes reflect the evacuation planning work required of the county and is underway in the second phase of our safety element update project to map and evaluate evacuation routes. You can find all track change amendments to the safety element text in Attachment C, Exhibit 1 of your staff report. Specific safety element updates include updates to maps and a new online interactive safety element map, data and analysis on ignition sources, causes, major wildfires, and hazard reduction measures, wildfire plans and services, public outreach programs, risk reduction measures, tools, and programs, evacuation information, single egress neighborhoods pursuant to SB 99, local, state, and federal codes and regulations, policies and actions, and citations. Single egress neighborhoods is the name we assigned to the areas we map to comply with SB 99. SB 99 again requires the county to identify residential developments in hazard areas that have only one emergency evacuation route. The state will eventually provide guidance on what qualifies as a residential development, but their unofficial guidance is to have each jurisdiction determine how they want to define these areas. For instance, we defined a neighborhood as containing at least 30 lots. So our team worked with P&D GIS and a team of representatives from the fire districts, the County Office of Emergency Management, and County Public Works to develop mapping criteria for this exercise and then vet the mapping once it was completed. These requirements are not specific to wildfire, so we mapped these neighborhoods in various hazard zones, including tsunami and dam inundation zones, FEMA flood hazard zones, in addition to the fire hazard severity zones. And this work dovetails and supports our current work in phase 2 of our project that involves mapping and evaluating our evacuation routes. The wildfire policies and actions in the safety element underwent a fairly comprehensive update, by which I mean the policies were numbered, renumbered, and given titles. Some policies were carried forward from the 2015 version, sometimes with minor changes. And the 2015 version contains implementation measures, which we have renamed to actions. These actions are now more directly tied to certain policies. Many of these new policies and actions largely reflect standards and regulations with which the county already chooses to or must comply, including the state and county building code, the state and county fire code, and the state fire safe regulations. Attachment D of your staff report provides a table with each policy and action and describes whether it is a new or ongoing practice for the county. This slide gives you an idea of the project and review timeline. We began our initial safety element assessment review in May of 2022. Staff worked on draft amendments from June through January, and I'll get into more detail in that in a second. In February of this year, we submitted our safety element to the State Board of Forestry and Fire Protection when our safety element assessment was complete. March 7th was our hearing at the Board of Forestry's Resource Protection Committee, where CAL FIRE presented our safety element to the Board of Forestry for final review. At the conclusion of CAL FIRE's presentation, the Board of Forestry had no further official comments or recommendations on changing our safety element. Our hearing schedule included the Montecito Planning Commission on May 17th. Their recommendations are summarized in an action letter that is attachment E to your staff report. We will also take these amendments to the Board of Supervisors on July 11th, as Director Plowman mentioned. To expand on the work mentioned from June until January by staff, Long Range Planning staff reviewed OPR's Fire Hazard Planning document, part of its General Plan Technical Advice series. Some of our amended policies are from this document, as you will see in attachment D of the staff report. Long Range Planning staff also met with county fire staff to understand existing county regulations and policies, present research and policy examples, and seek recommended language on fulfilling the recommendations in the safety element assessment. We also corresponded with staff from Montecito Fire and Carpinteria Summerlin to solicit any comments or feedback. We also asked for comments on proposed amendments from the Development Review Division and P&D, County Office of Emergency Management, and County Parks to make sure that they were okay with any policy language changes that might affect them. The proposed safety element amendments are exempt from CEQA under CEQA Guidelines Section 15061B3, since the proposed amendments have no possibility of significant effect on the environment. We prepared a notice of exemption, which is included as attachment B to your staff report. Staff's recommendation is to approve the recommended actions listed on page 1 of today's staff report. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Well, thank you. Do any of my fellow commissioners have questions for Ms. Wilkinson or comments? Commissioner Bradley.
Again, I'm sorry, you guys, it's a light agenda, so I got really policy wonky about this. But, so, a couple questions. One, you talked about how the board had actually already approved on April 4th, 2023, the updated MJHMP, major whatever. It's a bad place, right? So if they already approved that, then why are we doing this now? I guess I'm confused in terms of the order. Normally we advise them.
Commissioner Bradley, through the chair. So so you're correct. The Board of Supervisors did approve the hazard mitigation plan, but the action today is integrating that document into the safety element, and doing so allows us to be eligible for additional state disaster relief funding. And we've done this previously, so it's not that we're approving it, we're just integrating that approved document into the safety element.
So was the timing on this just more to qualify for the funding? Otherwise, I mean, it would have seemed logical to do our step and then go to them with all one bundle. Am I confused?
Yes, I think you're right. I think we wanted to make sure that we were in compliance and eligible for that additional funding.
Okay, great. You answered that question. Wait, I have a couple other questions. Sorry, you guys. in your attachment C, the plan, right, on page 15, it has all these data about major fires in Santa Barbara County, but it ends in 2013, and yet your text thankfully talks about the Thomas Fire. So I'm wondering why the table only goes to 2013 when we had like our most significant ones after that.
Commissioner Bradley, a lot of this information we take from the unit strategic fire plan. It's a plan that the county updates every year. And so we kind of take that as having kind of the best and most up-to-date fire data. And that's what was available in that plan. Rob, I don't know if you can speak to, this is the table. You know anything more about data collection?
Yeah, it looks like that one's from Forest Service. The unit plan goes all the way, it was just updated a month ago, so we can update this with a more current chart. This looks like it's coming from Forest
Department of
Service data.
Forestry, yeah.
But yeah, we have a more current version we can stick in there. That's a good
That would be
catch.
great if it's not too late, just because then your text covers it, and, you know,
Yeah.
everybody still remembers Thomas Fire and
No, that's a good
all that
catch.
stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
And one other question, let's see. Nope, that's just information. I guess that's it. Thank you.
Do we have any other comments or questions from planning commissioners? Commissioner Farini?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Park. Page 20, attachment C, exhibit 1. The third dot down towards the bottom, you lined out prescribed fire and then put prescribed fire back in. And I guess we don't use the language. Is this just an update to fire speak? There's no, I like controlled burns myself, but what's going on there?
Commissioner Farini, through the chair, I think it's an error to have it lined out twice. The text that is supposed to be there is prescribed fire, which I believe is the more current and correct term versus controlled burn.
That's correct. Yeah, industry standard now in forest agencies is prescribed fire.
And is that just replacement syntax for control burn, or is it a whole different description?
It means the same thing. I think the state and federal agencies previously using controlled burn, I think that there was some reflection in that there's never really a case where a prescribed fire is truly controlled. There's always an element of uncontrolled nature. And I think prescribed fire more accurately recognizes what's actually happening, is that you're purposefully lighting a vegetation fire under a certain weather prescription and doing your best to ensure that it's controlled, but reflecting that in no way is it ever 100% controlled. So I think it gives government agencies describing it better to the public, so the public understands, yes, with the prescribed fire program, there is some measure of risk.
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? I wanted to make a couple of comments. One, Ms. Wilkinson, I presume you were the primary drafter of the staff report?
Chair Park, that's correct.
I must say, when I saw this item on the projection report over several different weeks, I thought, I really don't understand what it's going to be, and I was a little fearful, you know. And I dug into that staff report, and it's so clear in its navigation of the legislation that mandates everything that's happening here, and also so clear in describing the tremendous amount of interdepartmental and interjurisdictional collaboration that's already occurred I was impressed. I was impressed for two reasons. One, that, well, not that I could understand it, but I could understand it, and I was impressed that the drafter drafted something that I could understand. And I was also very impressed, and this is for you, Mr. Hazard, and others, for all the collaborative work that's gone into the plan that was referred to in the question from Commissioner Briley and other things to get all this together. So kudos to all of you. And another thing I was impressed with was how all of this elaborate work addressed some really good practical things. And two that stood out in my mind, and I'm actually going to ask a question about one, so bear with me here. But one that struck me as very obvious but very important was the reference to access roads to projects to serve as sort of ring roads to buffer fire. I thought that makes a lot of sense. And I thought about that when we get projects in front of us. And it's something I hope we have incorporated into our different development standards and so forth. It's a really good point. Another one, and this will lead up to my question, I thought, what an important thing to identify and map our neighborhoods that don't have that secondary access. And I was going to ask, has the mapping occurred, and what neighborhoods have it and what don't? But you already had a slide on that. That was excellent. And I was kind of surprised at how many there were and how massive they were. One I'm familiar with is Hollister Ranch, and every time I go there, I wonder, how does anybody ever get out if there's a problem? I noticed several others. So here's the question. Very important to map these, to identify them. Will there be anything like a retrofitting effort or something? I mean, what do we do in response to identifying these places that don't have the secondary access? Do we just say, well, give us the best plan you can and good luck? Or is there something else that might happen in the future to improve the situation? I hope that question's clear. Your report's clear. My questions probably aren't, but give it a shot.
Chair Park, so I think the exercise does have a lot of utility for the county moving forward in helping to ensure projects mitigate to the greatest extent possible any wildfire risks that they have. Where we have topography, and we have tons of topography in our county that really precludes a lot of our canyon neighborhoods from having a secondary access egress. And so in those cases, what this exercise allows the county to do is require other mitigating measures, sort of like for like, as in same practical effect in the code. Fire code allows that type of interpretation. So for example, it might mean that the primary road has to be widened to allow more traffic on that route. It might mean you reduce the number of units that are in very high fire hazard severity zones. Or, as you mentioned previously, you might require a redesign of the proposal to include perimeter roads or green belts that provide a natural buffer to wildland fire. There's a spin-off benefit to that, to the county, that many of our legacy communities that were not designed in this way often require the county fire department or parks, if it's parkland surrounding the communities. We spend a lot of time and energy and public funds doing vegetation management to create field treatments around these communities. But if they're designed appropriately to include things like perimeter roads or green belts that are maintained by, say, a neighborhood association, it reduces that burden on county agencies. And then there are some of these neighborhoods we know that probably do have opportunities to create secondary access. Some of this might mean long-term prioritization of some public works projects to either maintain legacy access roads that just need a lot of money thrown at them so they can be considered a public way. Or in the case of communities like Hollister Ranch, there are routes that access to the west, but they are going to require easements to be negotiated and maintenance of those roads so that they actually can be identified as a public route out for the community. So I think there's a lot of ways that this mapping can lead to safer community, moving forward.
My crazy mind is launching off in different directions here, and I'm so forgive me ahead of time, but I'm thinking we're having this intensive effort right now on the countywide recreation master plan. We're looking at open space element revisions perhaps, and all sorts of things. And as we know, there's pressure on some of the private communities like Hollister Ranch for enhanced recreation. And it just seems to me that there's such a logical interrelationship of vegetation management, buffer zones, and recreation. So I hope that the collaborative effort that you've shown so far can go even further to involve some of our other county departments as we go through these major endeavors to add recreation, which we sorely need here, but do it in ways that can make the community more safe. That's a topic I haven't really thought about a lot, but I'm glad you've provoked it in me, and I hope we take advantage of it. So thank you.
Chair Park, I'll add to that. Since I've been in my position in prevention, last about almost 10 years now in this field, I've seen the collaboration across different county departments increase, and I frequently interact with county parks in terms of doing vegetation management projects within the parks to help them out. We've got hand crews that can come in and do those types of projects for them. And then we've obviously have just continuing, strong relationship with county P&D. And we're even looking at projects with Public Works up at Barone Ranch around the transfer state, the landfill, using some prescribed herbivory, which is grazing, to reduce fire risk up there through vegetation management. So across the board right now, we're seeing a lot of collaboration. So I share your support for that. I hope that it continues long past all of our careers.
Well, see, you even touched on fire management going beyond controlled burns, and I know that in the kind of cultural world now, we often refer to indigenous burning practices as being something different than a controlled burn. They were so frequent and kind of low intensity, and now you've even touched on biological controls. I've got my sheep out working on eating black mustard grass around the San Ynez Valley because nobody else knows how to get rid of it, but sheep love it, and that's going to help out for the fire department when you get some of those calls in September or October. So, well, fascinating topic, and you folks have done a great job in bringing it forward to us.
Mr. Chair, I had one more question. I
Yes,
forgot.
go ahead.
Well,
I knew you would.
I
That's
know.
why I was stalling for
The more I
time, so you
read,
could dig
so-
into things.
Thank you. Okay, so on, lots of red text added on page 40, the fire policies, goals, and implementation measure, and then I'm, especially on the bottom of page 41, which is the discourage high-risk uses in hazard zones. This is particularly applicable to us. How is high-risk uses defined? Is it defined anywhere, or maybe you can just describe it for us? Like, I know the Botanic Garden has a condition about not being open on high risk, red flag days. But is that high-risk uses defined anywhere? Policy Fire 1.2. At the bottom.
So Commissioner Bradley, I apologize for the error. That's the incorrect version of that policy. It was actually changed. If you refer to attachment D, there's the correct version of policy 1.2. I apologize.
And that's just numerically in your table, right? Okay.
Yes. Page D3.
Okay, so that doesn't really pile on the land use per se, it just talks about plans for development and standards being met.
Right.
Okay. Okay. When we get to the point of the findings, I think there was something that I would maybe recommend we add to the resolution, which was recognition of the Montecito Planning Commission's recommendation that we do this very thing. So I don't know if we're at that point of deliberations versus questions.
Well, we're getting close to the point. Why don't we go ahead and see if we have any public comment?
That's right.
No public comment.
No public comment, and we don't really have an applicant presentation and rebuttal in the normal sense. So we'll close the public hearing and go into deliberations. Do we have any further comments or questions by planning commissioners? Commissioner Cooney?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to comment as a longtime inhabitant of what could be referred to as a hazard zone with respect to fire. This effort that staff has undertaken in cooperation with fire agencies, and much of which is mandated, couldn't come at a better time. I think if you walk around my neighborhood at least, but really throughout the South Coast, we have vegetation, wild vegetation growing at levels that I've never experienced. And my assumption is that a lot of it's going to remain throughout the warmer months of the summer ahead. So preparation, planning, these are all things that we've been short on, I think, in the past, and it, it is always problematic when we get to the dry season. So I think however it came to us, either through a long process through the county or through the fire agencies, this collaboration is never more important than it is right now.
I think that's a very good point, Commissioner Cooney. This is all about literally saving lives and what could be a higher purpose for us. Okay, any other comments from commissioners?
No, I completely concur with Commissioner Cooney, and good job, staff. I know this was probably a struggle to get all the redlining to line up correctly, but if we are considering deliberations and on the findings for approval, I'm sorry, that's not it. On the resolution that you had, that I just had in front of me, I just wanted to add recognition of the Montecito Planning Commission's action and recommendation. So that is, sorry, attachment A, right? Page 2 of attachment C, the third paragraph down. Secretary Wilson is looking at me going, Commissioner Bradley.
No, he's just wondering, do you ever drink decaf coffee?
What do we want to incorporate the Montecito Planning Commission action in that nice little paragraph?
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, just a little context. The information at the Montecito Planning Commission was a discussion that was by the Fire Marshal for the Montecito Planning Commission. Subsequent to that, we've had additional information as far as our coordination and collaboration effort. I would not recommend adding that into the resolution.
Okay.
If the commission wanted to just ask staff to forward that to the board, that's appropriate. However, just to put a little bit more context around that fourth action that they took, I think it'd be good to hear from Mr. Hazard today as far as his efforts in his role in coordinating with other fire districts, as well as that there was outreach with the Montecito Fire District as well. So I don't know if it needs to be in the resolution. If that's okay with the chair, if we could hear from Mr. Hazard, just to have a little bit more of a context to the world that he lives in and the coordination that he does.
Well, I would love to hear that. Mr. Hazard, you up for that?
Commissioners and Chair Park. The county operational area, this is all of the fire departments within the county. They meet monthly through the Santa Barbara County Fire Chiefs Association. And in those monthly meetings, various elements of each department present reports. So I present a report for prevention across the county. So for probably the past 2 years, I typically monthly provide the update of the safety element to include notification to the affected agencies. These principally would be county fire, but also Montecito Fire Protection District because they have unincorporated land within their district, and Carp Summerlin Fire Protection District also have unincorporated land. Both of those districts, by that nature, fall under county planning for those unincorporated lands. And so I provide that update to the county chiefs that the project is ongoing, that if they have input or updates or want to be part of that process, to work through the county fire marshal's office. Both those fire districts collaborated on pieces of this project, and you have to remember that this project has gone through, years of updates. And so I think the Montecito Fire Marshal probably didn't realize he actually had collaborated on the document, but he'd collaborated through specific elements. For example, the single egress mapping, subdivision review, as well as Title 14 updates to our county development standards. And so the fire marshals work through those code requirements every 3 years when we go through code adoption. And as a group, the fire marshals, we work as hard as we can to try to get our individual fire codes as aligned as possible. It's better for developers throughout the county to know that they're working under a very similar code and not get blindsided if they do a project in Montecito and then they do a project in Goleta that's markedly different in code. So I think the confusion came from that they had worked on most elements of the safety element. Moving forward, my staff have had a lot of discussions with both Montecito and Carp Summerlin about further integrating them into the county's workflow. We're currently doing most of our work internally through Microsoft 365 and that process, Teams. And so the challenge just is that we need to do a separate outreach to those departments because they're not in the county's internal IT system. And so we're aware of that, and further collaboration will incorporate both of those prevention offices. It'll have to be a parallel track because of the technology side of it, county internet security and our internal process. But moving forward, that's the direction we're going to go.
Thank you. I was just, that was really illuminating, and I really appreciate the explanation. This comment on the resolution was just more just the process in public. I mean, Montecito Planning Commission had some consideration, and they adopted their own thing. We got that in our packet, so we wanted to recognize them. I guess we don't. And I struggle with this, like 101. They had advisory remarks that we considered carefully when we looked at the 101 project, and here they considered this carefully, so I was wondering if there was a way to just acknowledge that, without any detail or assumption of what their comments were exactly. But if you advise against that, I'm okay with that too, Secretary Wilson.
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Bradley, it's appropriate to acknowledge their comments, and we've heard additional information to frame what their concerns were. Their concerns were making sure that that coordination and collaborative effort was occurring or will occur. And it sounds like it is already occurring and it'll continue to occur. My recommendation is you can acknowledge that, and then staff can, they can indicate this in the board agenda letter, that it went to the Montecito Planning Commission, the County Planning Commission heard it, acknowledged it, and is forwarding those comments to the board. I don't recommend adding it to the resolution. I think the resolution stands on its own merits as it is now.
Well, are matters clear enough for one of my fellow commissioners to make a motion?
No, I've been touching that thing all morning.
I'll make the motion to adopt.
Okay. Commissioner Martinez, thank you.
I'll second.
And do we need any clarification of the motion, Mr. Secretary?
I'm just clarifying that the motion is what's indicated on the staff report.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
That's what I presume, but that's what I wanted to ask. Okay. Do any of the commissioners have any comments on the motion as stated now that we're still in deliberations? It looks like no. So will all in favor of the motion please say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
And the motion's carried. Okay, do we have anything else on this matter? Do we have anything else before us today?
Mr. Chair, that concludes our agenda.
Okay, then we're adjourned.
Before 10:30.
See, we didn't even get a bathroom break.